I said anything.
Thank you.
Yes, लोगों को.
All right.
Prime Minister, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to breakfast with the Prime Minister of Pakistan. My name is Richard Ensor. I'm the Managing Director of Euromoney Institutional Investor, and it's a pleasure to introduce the Prime Minister. It may sound a little presumptuous, but he and I have quite a lot in common. We were both born and grew up in Karachi. We both have a career in international banking. I'd like to say we're both rather well-connected and sophisticated people. So my question is, how come he gets the top job and I don't? Now, for those of you who have not looked at Institutional Investor, please do so. There's an excellent section on Pakistan and the developments that have taken place and will take place. So I commend that to you. And I'd like just to pick 4 statistics out of that analysis for you that concern Mr. Aziz. First, he's achieved 6 to 8% growth for 4 years in succession in Pakistan, and that's something I believe has never been achieved before. Secondly, over 6 years, he's increased foreign direct investment inflows tenfold. Thirdly, he has initiated and conducted a massive structural reform program, including, of course, the privatization. 5 years ago, 90% of banking was in the public sector. Now 90% of it is in the private sector. And finally, since the Prime Minister took over as Finance Minister in 1999, GDP per capita has doubled in Pakistan, and perhaps more importantly, some 15 million people in Pakistan have moved out of what is defined as poverty. Prime Minister.
Colette. You're on.
Good morning. I'm Colette Matour. I'm with the World Economic Forum. And first, I would like to thank our dear friend and neighbor, Ikram Segal, for hosting this traditional breakfast. I'm always amazed at the talent, but I know the recipe. Everybody likes him. He's such a nice person. And everybody's interested in Pakistan, so it's a very good recipe. I'd like to welcome all of you to this traditional breakfast. I think it's the 5th time in a row that it is being held. And finally, I would like to turn to Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz, who is also a dear friend of the forum. First, in his capacity as a banker, we worked with him, and he helped us in our activities in Asia. Pakistan, for us, is a country with which we have worked for over 2 decades now. So we have followed Pakistan's economic progress, difficulties. We have shared the sorrow of the last earthquake, but we are very proud to be associated with Pakistan. And I think, Mr. Prime Minister, you have a lot of good news to tell us, and we are very happy for you, for everybody. And now I'd like to give you the floor.
Thank you.
Since he's paying the bill, he has a right to speak.
I've got. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to thank all of you for coming so early in the morning. Every time we have the same thing. The embassies keep asking me, how many people will come? Will 30, 40 people come? The room is full, which means about 200 plus people are here. I thank all of you for coming, and I apologize. There are only 80 people on the tables, and the rest are on free seating. What we did was, in order to accommodate all the ministers, ambassadors, so talk with you, we put them on the table first, and then we took the acceptances one by one. And I apologize to the members of the press, because I know they feel huge, but it is beyond my control, and I particularly apologize to you for this reason. Since I must acknowledge a few things, I must acknowledge the wonderful work Wendy Gallagher did from Institutional. Stand up, Wendy, and be seen wherever you are, if she's here. Okay, terrific. The terrific report, which was brought out by Institutional Investor, and it really showcases Pakistan. Showcases Pakistan to what the Prime Minister was speaking about. And I want to mention here the wonderful work your Minister for State for Finance did, Omar Ayub, who is not here, in setting this report together. And I really, I thank the members of Davos group, the public sector executives who are here, Tariq Kirmani, Jalil Siddiqui, and the bankers, Zakir Mahmood, Aftab Manzoor, they're here. And of course, I must mention here that the powerhouse, the private entrepreneurs, among them there is Hussain Dawood is here, and his vice presence, and and whom I call the infant terrible of Pakistan, Arif Naqvi, because this man, please Arif, take a bow. Arif has done more for Pakistan outside than anybody else that I can think about. You know, I really feel proud of the fact of this young man, because he really put Pakistan on the stage where other people have ventured. I want to use this occasion to request the Prime Minister and request Colette on the side. There's not enough participation from Pakistan from the private sector, and we must have more participation. It is required. Private sector entrepreneurship, unless they come in, there's only 3 of us or 4 of us or 5 of us, where there should be 15, 20. And I think the Prime Minister, with you know what WEF can do, the networking, etc., can do for Pakistan, and Colette from WEF side to accommodate Pakistan. We may not be as rich. I want to say to you that we've got ministers on every table, and we've got Mr. Humayun Akhtar, the Minister of Commerce here, Mr. Ras Lagari, we've got Zahid Hamoud, we've got Hina Rabbani Khar, we've got basically we've got them spread all over. Salman Shah, advisor on finance, Salman Shah is also here. So we've got all of them here on the various tables, and we hope you use the opportunity to talk to them, etc. I want to thank my friends of mine who keep coming all the time, people like Ajit Gulabchand, Drew and Savleen Singh, Drew and Rafti, and Firoza is here, Jamshed could not be here, Adi Godrej, people who keep coming, and thank you very much, because at least shows a vote of confidence in me personally. And of course, they are friends of the Prime Minister also. Prime Minister, Prime Minister asked me what to, he said, you know, I asked the Prime Minister, what do you want to speak? He said, anything, right? So Prime Minister, we let you speak for anything for about 10 minutes, and we'll make it about proactive after that, question and answer. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here on such an early hour. And thank you, Ikram, for arranging once again a really eminent gathering of Davos attendees. Colette, as usual, the forum gets better every year, and we from Pakistan certainly consider the forum as an excellent medium to express views, meet people, and really present the Pakistan story to the world. And Richard, Mr. Ansar is a banker. Let me tell you, there's still a bright future ahead for you. So, you never know when it comes. When it comes, when it rains, it pours. But anyway, Euromoney has been a great partner of Pakistan, and I thank you and your organization. As Ikram said, I'll try to keep it brief so we can spend more time with you on Q&A. Let me just give you a brief monologue on Pakistan and some of the key areas of interest for everybody. Pakistan, as most of you know, ladies and gentlemen, is a country with a unique location, which in today's world gives it a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities. We are located at the crossroads of South Asia, the Middle East, and Central Asia. And our immediate neighbors are China, India, 2 major countries, and we have Afghanistan and Iran, 2 countries always in the news. We, of course, across the waters of the Gulf.
Yeah, everything okay.
Our territorial waters touch the waters of Oman, and that gives us our strong connection with the GCC countries. So Pakistan is located in a unique part of the world. It's a country of 160 million people, a responsible nuclear power, and a country which is on the move. Pakistan's various changes in Pakistan are quite broad, widespread, and I will try to highlight to you where we are on this situation. Now, let me start with the reform agenda of Pakistan, which we believe is unique, and when history is recorded, will be regarded as one of the deeper, wider reform agendas of any developing country at this time. The reforms we started 7 years ago when President Musharraf took charge and called me. I was sitting in the comfort of my corner office on a street called Park Avenue in New York, and I had never met the president, never seen him, never heard his name. No disrespect to him, but I was in New York and he was in Pakistan. So when the call came, I was quite intrigued, and one thing led to the other. And I first ended up, as you know, as Minister of Finance and now as Prime Minister. So if you look at when we arrived, Pakistan was in a very challenging state. And the first thing I looked like any good finance person at the time is at the cash position, and it looked pretty dismal. And we thought that in the next 2 to 3 months, we'd have difficulty paying our bills. In any case, we worked, we reformed, and we have now substantially transformed the economy. The Pakistani reform agenda is not just an economic reform agenda. It covers the economy, it covers political reform, legal reform, the social sector, and a host of other areas. Let me start with the political reform. Pakistan today has elected local, provincial, and federal or national parliaments, and the opposition is very strong. They are vociferous. They are always trying to express their point of view, and they are free to express their point of view. Coupled with our journey into democratic order, we have freed the press totally. And today there are 50 private TV channels, 50, all trying to be faster than the other in terms of news. And you know what that creates, that they sometimes create news too. But we are happy with that because I think this is part of a growing up process where a free press can really be a tremendous stakeholder in the reforms and in the change in the thinking of the people of Pakistan. We also have an independent judiciary. We are very proud of that. They have given some excellent judgments, sometimes favoring the government and sometimes against the government. And cases are decided on merit, and we are very proud of what they've achieved. So in the overall political reform area, the opposition parties are free to operate and free to access the media and free to criticize the government in any shape or form. We also have a comfortable majority in the parliament. And may I say that in the political reform, we mandated, because we thought affirmative action was needed, number of seats which women should have. And they are reserved seats, and women can also fight elections like anybody else. So in the parliament, 20% of the seats are reserved for women. We have more women in parliament than many other countries. I have in my cabinet 8 ministers who are women and occupying important portfolios. And so the gender reform was also part of this overall reform. So in the political area, of course, we are making progress. Every day we liberalize more. And I think this is a tremendous change in a country where even in the past, where you had elected governments, if you wrote too much against the government, you got a knock at the door. Nobody knocks at your door anymore. And now coming to economic reform, of course, this is in the overall reform agenda, the star of the show. We have transformed anemic and no growth economy into one of the faster growing economies of Asia. Our average growth rate has been 7%. The size of the economy has doubled. The per capita has increased. And today Pakistan is an attractive destination for investment, local and foreign. And this year would be the highest ever foreign investment in the history of the country. We think we'll comfortably cross $5 billion in a country where when we came in, the investment was $300 million per year. Now we'll go to 5 billion, and I think we could even go higher. Investment is coming from everywhere. North America, Europe, Far East, and the Middle East. And many people think that it's just coming maybe from the neighboring countries. Actually, the largest investors are the EU and North America, and then followed by the Middle East countries. And we have like the government of Singapore and other Far Eastern countries investing heavily in our. Why is this happening? I think one of the messages I would like to leave with the audience is reforms, reforms, and reforms. We created an environment in Pakistan so that change could happen and happen seamlessly. We took, for example, our civil servants, who are assets for the government. They had grown in yesterday's environment, controls, everything needed, an approval, etc. And our philosophy on economic reforms was liberalization, deregulation, privatization. For any country to leverage the full benefits of globalization, you must create in your country absorptive capacity for change and reform. And that is what we focused on. Now, what do I mean by absorptive capacity? Changing the mindset. Changing the mindset is not easy. It takes a lot of effort. So for the civil servants, for example, we took groups of 40 high potential civil servants and arranged a special course with the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. And 40 people keep going every so many months, different people, of course. And I call this experience opening the minds of the people. And it's changing. It takes a while, but it's changing. So now the approvals required are not there. Everything is deregulated. And we have tried to simplify as much as possible. We have more work to do, of course. Reforms never end. Reforms are a continuous process. Anybody who feels they have totally reformed will meet serious challenges. It's like being on a treadmill. If you stop, you fall, or if you stop, somebody else will get ahead of you. So this creation of the absorptive capacity in a country for reform is a major challenge for the leadership of any country. It cannot be done by piecemeal measures. It has to be backed by a philosophy and conviction. And then you keep converting the people, changing the mindset. Let me give you one example to illustrate the point. We had massive tax reform in Pakistan. Taxes was one of the most corrupt departments, at least in Pakistan. I can't speak for other countries. And the system was you'd go to every area had a tax czar. You would go and say, I want to pay my taxes. My income was, say, $1,000. This person would say, no, it was 10,000. They negotiate, and some tax is paid. The actual income is probably 100,000. So that's what happened, and we said, this is really ridiculous. We went on a self-assessment program, which happens in every country. You file your return, the computer picks up who is looking suspicious, and then they do an audit. Not rocket science, very basic stuff. We got resistance from the tax department, the tax lawyers, and above all, the taxpayers. They said, we've invested over the years so much in these tax officials. Now, if we don't even know who's going to look at our taxes, this is terrible reform. And they said that if you continue like this, if you implement this, your tax collection will go to zero. Well, let me tell you, 2 years later, our taxes are rising this year about 23%, and it's been going 15 to 20 to 25% a year. And nobody now wants to, all the people in the tax department want transfers out. Some want to stay. And what we did, coupled with this tax reform, is a total HR, human resource strategy for tax people. We doubled the salaries, we had massive training programs and brought in new people, plus converted some of the people who were willing to convert. The rest have gone to other departments, and I hope they're doing well. So the point is, you really have to have conviction in reform, and you'll have some blips on the way. And every aspect of reform in Pakistan, we have tried to do this. And let me also share another lesson we've learned, that if your reform agenda is well crafted, well choreographed, well presented and thought out, investment will come. Look at Pakistan's telecom sector. The minister responsible is sitting here. We reformed, we deregulated, and we changed the paradigm in the government for every activity. The ministries in the old days, or departments as they are known in some countries, they used to make policy, regulate, and operate. And we decided it's not the business to be in, of government to be in business. The ministries became strictly policy makers. Regulators were made independent. The regulators don't report to the minister. They report directly to the prime minister. So we had a check and balance. And the regulator is supposed to look at the interest of all stakeholders. And then all business activity goes to the private sector. In this case, what we've done has really worked wonders. We've had billions of dollars. How much have you got so far? $6 billion of direct and indirect investment in the telecom sector. We own nothing now. The government has sold the phone company. Everybody thought that would be a national security risk if you sell your phone company to investors. And as you know, our policy is there is absolutely no differentiation between local and foreign investors. So we opened the door, and Etisalat of the UAE bought our phone company, and we have several other foreign investors, and most of them are foreign actually in the telecom sector, from all over the world. And we are adding, ladies and gentlemen, 1 million new phones a month. It was no growth in the old days. Now, cellular phones alone, million a month. We are now close to 40 million subscribers and growing. One of the faster growing phone companies in the world. So, with this economic growth, etc., we've created a new middle class. The quality of life products are selling like crazy. If you talk to the big companies, they'll acknowledge that. And as was mentioned earlier, poverty levels have come down. 13 to 15 million people have gone out. Still, 24% of the population is living below the poverty line. Per capita is higher than most countries in South Asia, about $846 per head. Purchasing power parity, $2,500 per head. And in reforms, frankly, we stand out in our region as a country which has gone the extra mile to really create the environment conducive for growth. The middle class, of course, is driving demand. The middle class is creating new pressures in the economy, and we are dealing with those. Now, let me turn from the economy, ladies and gentlemen, to the situation with our neighbors very briefly, which may interest many people here. Let me start with China. China and Pakistan have a close strategic relationship, and it is changing. It is very interesting if you step back and see the Pakistan-China relationship, where it was, where it is today, and where it's going. It's a total sea change. In the old days, it was more diplomatic cooperation, some defense linkages, etc. Then we moved on into broader areas of cooperation, science and technology, education, culture, what have you. And now we are seeing investment flows. Our humble view is that China will be one of the largest exporters of capital in the world. The impression about China is they produce goods and they sell. Yes, but their paradigm is shifting too. They are going to increasingly go and export capital. They're doing that now, but it'll take different dimensions. China has decided to open 8 industrial zones all across the world. Pakistan is the first country they've started. The president of China, Hu Jintao, and myself inaugurated this a couple of months ago. And this is now going to bring in Chinese entrepreneurs who will invest in Pakistan. The China-Pakistan relationship is a strategic relationship. We consult, we discuss, we share, and we both have, we are very proud of our friendship. With India, the relationship is headed in the right direction. Our composite dialogue, which started many years ago, is moving ahead. The ambiance is much better. The trust deficit is reducing. We still have the core issue of Jammu and Kashmir, which is driving the whole relationship. And we believe if the issue of Jammu and Kashmir is settled, it can materially change the destiny of people in South Asia. It has such a broad footprint that to get Kashmir moving in the right direction will really transform the whole region. We have various discussions going on with India, back channel, front channel, at all levels, and we are hopeful that this could lead to a lasting solution. May I say that President Musharraf some time ago presented some out-of-the-box ideas on Kashmir, which included demilitarization, which included self-governance, which included some sort of a shared management, and we are pursuing various options, and as soon as some tangible progress is made, I'm sure the world will know. But we believe that Kashmir must be addressed, and the ultimate solution for Kashmir should reflect the wishes and aspirations of the Kashmiri people. Now, as a fallout of all this, the only country in the world where trade and investment is somewhat restricted in Pakistan is for India. And we have said that progress on Kashmir will be linked to progress on the economic side. Now, this is countercultural for Pakistan. This is against our philosophy, because our basic economic philosophy is free market, etc. So as soon as this issue gets headed in the right direction, we will then be open. We are open to every country in the world, so why not everybody? But it will be linked to progress on Kashmir. Then with Afghanistan, this is the history of Pakistan-Afghanistan relations are well known to most of you, so I won't go into that, except to say that when the Soviets attacked Afghanistan, Pakistan joined the global coalition to support local efforts to resist this occupation. And people were recruited from all over the world, largely Middle Eastern countries. They were brought to the north of Pakistan, trained and sent in, and they fought the war. And eventually the Soviets withdrew. And when the Soviets withdrew, these people who were brought in to tackle the Soviets were left without their sponsors, and that was the birth of Al-Qaeda. That is how Al-Qaeda was created. And that then, Afghanistan went off the world's radar screen pretty much till sort of 9/11 came and everybody started looking at what's going on here. Pakistan in this whole period paid a huge price for tension near its borders. Pakistan also, because Afghanistan sort of imploded. You know, there were governments coming and going, but a lot of warlords were running different parts of the country. And I think nobody even recognized Afghanistan except Pakistan. Why did we do that? Let me be very clear. Our policy is that whatever country or whatever government exists in your neighborhood, you've got to engage them. Engagement does not mean you agree with them, but engagement is necessary to keep the doors open. And that's what drove our relations with Afghanistan. We ended up with millions of refugees, and ladies and gentlemen, even today, we have 3 million refugees in Pakistan. Many people now are talking about the security situation in Afghanistan, which concerns us. Let me tell you, on Afghanistan, Pakistan believes that more should be done in Afghanistan to contain what is today perceived as the problem of the Taliban. We have 3 million refugees and many refugee camps which serve as safe havens. The border is 1,700 miles, one of the most treacherous terrain in the world. We have put 80,000 troops there. We have lost about 600 plus lives, more than the entire allied troops in Afghanistan, protecting the border, tackling, intercepting these people. But it's a huge border, and we are now thinking of fencing parts of the border. We are also at the point called Chaman, which is the highest frequency of movement across the border, 30,000 people a day. As you may know, Pakistan and Afghanistan, the people in that area have easement rights. They live on one side of the border. In fact, some villages, the border passes through the village, meaning that your living room is in Afghanistan, your bedroom is in Pakistan. So we had an old system of giving chits for people to cross over, and you know what chits do. People sort of create them. Now we've just installed, a few weeks ago, the most modern biometrics ID system. And we are issuing these cards so people can be identified who's going, who's coming. The border is porous, and people do come in. We have seen leadership and members of Taliban go back and forth. We chase them, they go to the other side. And some names like the Haqqani and his sons, Usmani, who died just recently, the Dadullah and Bakhjan, and these are all Taliban leaders. They keep going back and forth. Now, when they come and take refuge in the camps, they recruit, they train, and they even impact local people. So our view is these camps should go. To conclude on Afghanistan, in my meeting with President Karzai a couple of weeks ago, we said the following. First of all, we would like the refugees gradually to go back. And let's draw a whole program with help from friendly countries and the United Nations so that these people go back. And the incentive for elements to come into these camps and use them as safe havens will disappear. Quetta, the city which often is mentioned in the press, is around Quetta, in and around Quetta. There are 600,000 refugees, Afghan refugees. And as you know, ethnically, they are mostly Pakhtun. Taliban are also Pakhtun. Nobody has written on their forehead, I am a Taliban. When they cross the border, they have no arms. They get a little ID card, or maybe they don't, because if it's Polish, they just walk through. So if these camps go, then we can really change the whole paradigm, walking back and forth. Then second, we said that Afghanistan needs a Marshall Plan type approach to really give people hope. We believe that this is necessary because people need to have a sense of hope and light at the end of the tunnel. And there was clear evidence, in our view, what is driving the Afghan economy today are two factors. Number one, aid. Number two, drug money. And this is a very dangerous environment, because we believe the nexus between drug money and terrorism is really a very tough nexus. Also, a movement like a movement which exists in Afghanistan against the establishment, against presence of foreign troops, does not run on empty bellies. There must be a lot of funding coming, and we believe it's the drug money which is funding this. So, a war against drugs, replacement of poppy with some other crops, a whole program to give people alternate sources of income, very complex, very difficult. Pakistan is poppy free. We know what we had to go through to maintain this program. So it'll be a big challenge. Today, the largest supplier of drugs to Europe is Afghanistan. So this is the extent of the production. So drugs must be attacked. Marshall Plan must, and I was very pleased to see yesterday in the press that the United States has announced a new approach to put in about billion dollars into Afghanistan, because this has been recognized now. We've been saying it for quite a while, that we need a fresh approach to give people of Afghanistan a sense of a better future. Anyway, if there's one country in the world which wants Afghanistan to be strong, stable, and vibrant and secure, it is Pakistan. It is in our strategic interest and economic interest. 10 years ago, our trade with Afghanistan was $25 million a year. Today, it is $1.5 billion, and that is the extent of the change. So we benefit financially, economically, and we also want Afghanistan to prosper because it is our link to Central Asia. If you look at Pakistan and the way we visualize Pakistan, we are uniquely positioned, and if Afghanistan can be normalized, our linkage with Central Asia to provide energy corridors, oil, gas, and electricity, trade corridors, and transportation corridors will open up new vistas of cooperation in that whole region and expose Central Asia to the world and give them an alternate route. Rather than go up north through Moscow, etc., they can come down south, and they are much closer to the Arabian Sea than they would be through the other route. So that's what we are trying to do, and we continue to be engaged with Afghanistan, but clearly, as you read in the press, there are challenges in this situation, and many visible and invisible stakeholders are at work in Afghanistan. It's a very complex situation which has to be dealt with, and eventually, as Afghanistan normalizes, I think that will really change the whole scene in that area. Let me move south to Iran. Iran, we have a 900-mile border. Again, we live in an interesting neighborhood. Iran is the next neighbor. And I will just comment briefly on our position on the Iranian nuclear program. And we believe that Iran must not proliferate or produce nuclear weapons. Iran must respect their NPT commitments. However, every country has the right to use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes under IAEA guidelines, IAEA monitoring, and what have you. We also believe that use of force to settle this issue will have catastrophic implications in the whole region. And this must be avoided, and diplomacy alone should find a solution to this issue. Easier said than done, I recognize that, but this has been clearly our position. The situation is very, very sensitive, and we are engaged with the powers around the world and our neighbors and everybody to try to see if something can be worked out. Overall, let me just comment on other reforms and other things of interest and conclude, because I've violated my 10-minute license to talk. which is on other interesting things happening in Pakistan. Gender reform. We are very proud of the fact that we have passed legislation in the last few months, which people thought we would never do. In fact, if you read the press clips a few months ago, they said the government would back out because the religious parties were putting pressure, and they said, if you pass this law, we will paint the whole town red, so to say. We will come out and we will resist you in every forum. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we took a decision that we must do this, and we persevered. We passed the law, which has given women rights which they should have had anyway. Phase 2 of this is coming, and this has made a major difference. The women of Pakistan are happy, the people of Pakistan are happy. Let me tell you some other breakthroughs on the gender side. For the first time in our history, we have women cadets in the Pakistan Military Academy, 30 or 40 of them. And this is the first time they've ever had women there, and they'll be graduating soon. I was at the Air Force Academy a year ago, and I was surprised and pleased to see our first batch of 6 fighter pilots who have now graduated, and they are flying the latest fighter aircraft in Pakistan, and so on and so forth. We're doing a lot for women, but there's a long way to go. Women education, women empowerment, and above all, giving them an economic or an income-producing capacity is critical to getting women back to where they are. And let me be very clear. Women's empowerment and reforms does not imply westernization. Many people misinterpret what we're doing. Living within our culture, living within our traditions, women can do much more than they have been allowed to do. So that is what we are pursuing, and this is a clear policy of the government. There are many other initiatives. I can keep talking, but I think what I will do is pause now and turn the turn the session over to the audience for their questions and answers. And as I said earlier, you can ask anything about anything.
Please. Mr. Garrett Evans. Yes. Yeah. Could you take a mic, please? Yeah. Somebody bring a mic.
You can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm Gareth Evans from the International Crisis Group. Prime Minister, I think you'll be acutely aware that despite the fact that, as you mentioned right at the outset, the quality of Pakistani democracy is not getting anything like the rave reviews of the quality of the Pakistani economy under your stewardship. What assurances can you give that the next national elections will be and will be perceived to be genuine, free
Sure.
and fair, in particular so far as more or less unrestricted monitoring, both external and internal, of all stages of the election process, unrestricted candidatures, and unrestricted campaigning by the political leadership?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Evans. It's once again a pleasure to see you. And let me say that the democratic evolution in Pakistan is something we are very proud of. Fundamentally, everybody wants total and complete voice of the people to determine the affairs of the state. We are neither defensive, apologetic about our democratic setup today. It has some nuances, and you know as well as anybody else that this was a situation which was created a few years ago, and gradually we are getting back to normal. Now, in terms of elections, let me say emphatically that the elections will be under the laws of Pakistan, will be totally free and fair, and we have said repeatedly that they will be open to anybody coming and monitoring them. However, and also everybody will be free to contest under the laws of the country. This does not mean that people who have criminal cases, people who have violated the law of the land, people who have enriched themselves at the cost of the state will be immune from the laws of the country. And all parties are open, and let me be very frank and open. If you're referring to Muslim League, Nawaz Group, Nawaz Sharif, former Prime Minister's party, his party is active in Parliament. Pakistan People's Party, Ms. Bhutto's party, active. A very large women's bill will vote with the government. they supported us. Even Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz group abstained. They did not vote against the bill. So we are engaged in dialogue and discussion with every stakeholder. But these basic laws and principles will have to be followed. So yes, any group can send any number of observers anywhere in the election. Pakistan, as you've been there, is in that sense a very open country. You can go, you can come, and we would be delighted if more and more people come and observe the elections. We believe that the voice of the people through the ballot box is the ultimate way to find out how people are thinking, and we are very committed to elections, free and fair. As you know, end of this year, the term of the parliament will end, and I'm very pleased that under my stewardship as the leader of the House of the Parliament, we will complete, for the first time in the history of the country, a complete term of parliament, number one. Number two, we will also not only complete the complete term, but this government will be the longest serving government in the history, elected government in the history of Pakistan. So we are very privileged, and please, when the elections happen, do come and send your colleagues.
Okay. I'm the editor of Caijing magazine, a leading financial magazine in China. My question is, I know you have academic background, so I'd like to know how do you define the reform of Pakistan? Is it a kind of Shaukat recipe or gradual reform or radical reform? That's my first question. The second is, since you mentioned about the export of capital from China, I'd like to, which areas do you expect the mostly of the capital could come from China, and what you have had already? You mentioned about 8 countries that China decided to open. The Pakistan is one of it. What are 7 others? Do you know? Thank you very much.
No, I should be asking you which are the 7 others. I have no idea. I was told by the Chinese government that that is what they're doing. And we are very, this is only natural, because if a country has $1 trillion in reserves and growing every day, they have to export capital. They are doing that now, mostly perhaps in debt instruments, but I see this whole portfolio changing rapidly with time. And I think that is really up to the Chinese government to decide. I can talk about Pakistan. On the reform agenda you asked about, ma'am, Pakistan's reform agenda can be described in one word, which is homegrown. And it was based on our needs. It was choreographed, designed, implemented by us, visualized by us, and that is why it has succeeded. Plus, there was a will in the government to succeed and implement these reforms. As you know, no matter where you are, change management is very difficult, and implementation of reforms creates Newton's third law of motion works very effectively. And may I remind everybody, high school physics, Newton's third law of motion, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. When you're reforming, the Newton's third law of motion has been amended. Every action has an unequal and grossly opposite reaction. So unless you have the will, the courage, and the determination to push through reform, you will really find that the vested interest, the people who are still looking in the rearview mirror when driving the car, will come at you with a vengeance. But if you go with determination, it will succeed. So homegrown reforms is what Pakistan's recipe is. Adapted to your needs, not taking a cookie cutter approach, taking something which works somewhere else and trying to implement it in your country. Doesn't work. Thank
It's
you.
closer to
Yes,
shock recipe.
Excuse me. Somebody else. Can I have the mic? Thank you.
We can hear you.
Good morning. Paul Verstappen, the Director of Oxfam. And I just first of all wanted to congratulate you on the agenda of this bill. It's, I mean, really fantastic, and I hope you'll keep going forward in that way. But I wanted to ask you a rather different question, which is one of the themes of Davos this year, which is climate change. And I'd be really interested to hear you just say just 1 or 2 words on how you see climate change affecting Pakistan.
Certainly.
Both internally, but actually also you sit in a whole very significant area in the world, particularly as concerns water, obviously, and just what your thinking is about some of the implications about the wider region and Pakistan.
Certainly, certainly, ma'am. Thank you for the Women's Bill. May I take this opportunity to say that the second version, phase 2 of the bill, is now ready. And when I get back, Parliament will be in session and we will be introducing the second tranche of this Women's Reform Bill. As regards climate change, this is an area, and the whole issue of environment and global warming has concerned us tremendously and a lot. As I look at the future, there are 3 key areas which will create opportunities and threats for the world: food security, water security, and energy security. And these 3 major areas will influence, in our view, events of the future. So we, like any other country, are looking at all these and trying to see how things work out. As you know, Pakistan is privileged to have a lot of snow-clad mountains, and in the north, out of the 12 highest peaks in the world, 5 or 6 are in Pakistan. So we have set up a small center of climate change and put some of our very good scientists and scholars there, and they are looking at the impact of glacier melting and how this would impact Pakistan of the future. And frankly, we have a lot of concerns at this time. So we are now sharing with the research done all over the world as to what will happen to this huge reservoir of water, which I call a water bank. And if this melts too soon, you will have flooding and all that, and then lead to shortages of water. So our response, and this is still work in progress, is to build storages, to change behavior of consumption of water, and then work on the environment as to see what is happening. Now, as you know, ma'am, that the latest efforts on looking at global warming have had some good results. Chile, I will mention as an example. Southern Chile, the ozone layer is now looking better because of control on emissions and various other policy measures. So I think this has to be not a country effort, but a global effort. But Pakistan will be a serious player. Pakistan is contributing. But at this stage, our whole effort is in infancy. But we are very concerned because water security is crucial to the growth of the country, and in the decades and years to come, water, energy, and food security will be key drivers of success or failure in any country. That's why we are very concerned. So stay tuned, and I have now 5 or 6 people in this little center, and since we started it a few years ago, it now reports directly into me, and I'm encouraging them as much as I can, but we are still learning as we go along. But I'm glad you pointed this out.
Please, go ahead.
Prime Minister, my name is Ken Roth from Human Rights Watch. I was very happy to hear you affirm the importance of freedom of the press as one of the many things in Pakistan. The real test, of course, of freedom of the press is whether the press is free to look into the most controversial issues. And one of those issues is the one that you mentioned, whether the Pakistani intelligence services, the ISI, is continuing to support the Taliban in cross-border operations. It actually despite the Army's efforts to control the border. Carlotta Gall of the New York Times went to Quetta, looked into the question, and found very disturbing evidence of ongoing support. And she was met in her hotel room by agents who beat her up, and took her notes. My question to you is, what is being done to penalize the ISI for that, to reaffirm press freedom, and ensure that the ISI is following what you say is government policy not to allow
Sure. First of all, let me thank you for the question. The reporter in question did visit Quetta, and I think you would agree with me that freedom of the press does not mean violating the laws of the land. I think the press has to set an example that they follow the rules and regulations of the host country they go in. What was the issue? The issue was that she didn't have any permission to go to Quetta. And there are rules of the game in Pakistan which must be followed. So it's regrettable that she violated those rules knowingly. And naturally, when you violate the rules, you have to face the law. As regards the ISI involvement, let me just say that this is one of the most ridiculous statements made and accusations made. Many people, you ought to know that ISI, which is working with the intelligence services of the whole world, is a first-class professional outfit and has been so recognized by everybody, including intelligence services from all over the world. And let me also tell you that the ISI has no permanent core of officers. The way we recruit in ISI is we select from various parts of the armed forces. They come for 3 to 4 years, they go back, and they're back in their units. And people said, well, maybe there are people in ISI who were there during the Afghan war and had their links, and they're the ones. These people are no longer there. Now, any individual who may have worked there and retired 20 years ago or 10 years ago may have views, and that can happen in any society. But let me categorically refute the institutional support of ISI to anybody, including the Taliban or anybody who's doing this cross-border activity. The problem of Taliban, sir, is in Afghanistan. The problem of Taliban and the solution for Taliban is, in fact, in Afghanistan. The people there are facing many challenges. The government is facing many challenges. If any country wants stability and prosperity in Afghanistan, it's Pakistan. So we are helping them. As regards on the New York Times reporter, the fact that she was physically, that is regrettable. We have a whole process of inquiries going on. But may I say to many members of the press here, you're welcome to come, but please follow the rules and regulations of your host country. And in terms of press freedom, there are many press members here from Pakistan too. They have more freedom than they ever had before. Foreign press too. Anybody wants to come, we'd be more than happy. In fact, I met somebody from the New York Times the other day, and I offered that if she wants to come back, I'd personally meet her. I had our Minister of Information meet her the day she arrived in Islamabad, day after the Quetta incident, and we obviously regret the fact if she was physically affected, but we told her that please follow the laws, and we will certainly look into, and we are looking into exactly what happened that day. Thank you.
No. Please, say, or you can take this one. Take this.
Let me first congratulate President Musharraf and you for your remarkable achievements on the economic front in Pakistan, and which you so very lucidly and delightfully put forth here in a language that we all understand. What I would like to know in order to understand its risks is, what do you think would go wrong and spoil the party? On the other hand, as far as India is concerned, which is excluded from this wonderful story, I have been coming here and I have been a very welcome guest, and we've had wonderful warmth and cordiality, but we haven't still been able to get down to business. And do you think that if we'd opened out the business ties between India and Pakistan and created a serious vested interest in each other's trade and industry, that the less likelihood of Kashmir spoiling the party, as well as possibly coming to a quicker solution?
First of all, sir, thank you for your comments. First of all, let me clarify for the purpose of all the audience present here. Trade between India and Pakistan is happening. In fact, it is just not open like it is with the rest of the world. We have about 1,400 or so items which are needed in Pakistan, and that for that trade has been allowed. We also are trying to export goods to India, but we have discovered that while India has offered MFN, the non-tariff barriers in India are a challenge. And getting anything in is like climbing Mount Everest. So we are trying to do that. And of course, I think what I've told our private sector is to get, find out how you get stuff in. And they are working on it. But as I said, the Kashmir issue is a core issue. Many people will say open normal economic ties and it will create a better atmosphere for solving these issues. Our public opinion feels otherwise. So we have to respect the public opinion of Pakistan. But even having said that, I think we are moving in the right direction. The trade volumes are growing. Trade will continue to increase. And once we show progress on the Kashmir issue, which we are now trying to endeavor, you will see a lot more. Because philosophically, we are open as a country, much more than India, for example. You still have many restrictions and controls. We have totally opened up our country's economy. So we would like India to participate, but the Kashmir issue has to show. And I would urge, as I do many times, to people in the private sector in India, to use their influence on their government to get them to agree to take this issue forward. And let me say that discussions between the two governments are going on as we speak.
Madhur Bhaja, you had a question.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for your
Last question after this, please.
articulation, your
One more
forthrightness, your frankness. I'm sure that will take us places. Since you have emboldened me to speak whatever I want to speak, I'll speak. You have also gone on record to make some good statements on terrorism, which has been flashed through media and all the hotels. Now, confidence building measure is something also which you have progressed in, and there are confidence building measure starts with a C, so does the three things which are happening: cricket, cultural exchanges, and the third one is commuting, that we have done there. There are two C's which I'm concerned about, sir. So one is about the camps. You did mention, I don't know whether they are Pakistan terrorist training camps or whether they are Afghani camps, I don't know. But if American or Indian or your own intelligence points out on these camps, are you willing to take action on them? Secondly, the criminals, the last C which I have. Indian government has given you a list of 20 criminals, some of which you have said are no longer in Pakistan. But can we start the process by giving us 2 or 3? Reciprocally, we would want from you if somebody is hurt Pakistan, so that we can do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The C's you mentioned are all relevant and important. But let me say that we are, if there is one country which has demonstrated its ability to tackle, oppose, and deal with terrorism, it is Pakistan. And why have we done it? Out of conviction. Because terrorism is a scourge we as global citizens must fight. Terrorism is no friend of anybody. It is no solution to any problem. And it disrupts society and disrupts Pakistan has been, in a sense, a victim. And we have, through our security services, dealt with it. And terrorism has to be dealt with in two ways: the security aspect and identifying the root causes and addressing them. And this means empowerment of the people. This means dispute resolution. This means giving them a voice. This means giving them a better life to look forward to. All those factors lead to the ultimate tackling of terrorism. So the root causes which you talked about, my statement the other day, is very important. And we cannot just tackle terrorism from a security standpoint. Certainly Pakistan also knows that the terrorist is no friend of anybody. Any gun he's pointing in one direction can change tomorrow to the other direction. So we have gone after terrorists. I think if you see the number of people we've arrested is probably one of the highest in the world. We also have gone after wherever there's activity which is prejudicial to our security in terms of dealing with camps, etc. I think there's enough evidence there. And let me just say that on bilateral relations, without going into details, I think the world knows that Pakistan is committed to peace with everybody. Pakistan is committed to peace with India also. We want dispute resolution. India must also recognize that issues cannot be put under the carpet. They have to be dealt with. They have to be, and on both sides, sensitivities of both sides must be kept in view. And that is what is effective diplomacy, that you see what the other party wants, create space for both so they can come to solutions. And frankly, on trade and other things, we are way ahead of many countries in South Asia. We've opened up, we've deregulated. So there's no philosophical barrier we have to cross. It is a desire to have sustainable peace in South Asia. And if you have sustainable peace in South Asia, I believe, as I said earlier, we can change the destiny of South Asia. And if irritants remain, then they will merely create more challenges for us. Also, as if peace is restored and sustainable, we then don't have to go into expenditure which we do today. Both India and Pakistan are spending a fair chunk on defending themselves. So there are a lot of implications. Pakistan has already thought through where we are and where we want to go, and that's why we are engaged in discussion and dialogue with your government. And let's see, let's keep our fingers crossed.
One last question and then we...
Mr. Prime Minister, this is not a Indo-Pakistan question, but with your wide-ranging economic agenda, we know that in South Asia, to get double-digit growth, we cannot do that without reform of the agricultural sector. There's a need for a radical reform in all our areas of the agricultural sector, and a lot of the population live in the rural areas and in the agricultural sector. And coupled with this is that some special reform package is needed for the Northwest Frontier and the Baluch areas. But personally, having come from that area and invested there, I do think these two things are merged. That it's possible, one, to reform the agricultural sector, and two, to possibly do it in these areas, and through this economic factor, lessen the tensions and the other things.
Thank you. Let me say, sir, that on agriculture and the rural economy, we have a whole agenda for reforms. And very briefly, this includes empowerment, yield improvement, building the infrastructure, diversifying the income of the farmer, and providing inputs at competitive prices. But our core of agricultural reform is that we have linked our agricultural prices to global prices. The farmer must benefit from prices all over the world and must also take some risk on how these prices move. Unless there's market dislocation where the government intervenes, we have linked it to international prices. On Balochistan and frontier, or the tribal area, they have special packages already. Balochistan is getting the highest share of development they ever did in their history. And as you can see, they are growing and developing now more and more. We are doing the same in the tribal area. We are also discussing with the US government creation of special zones in our border areas so that goods produced there can access the US at low tariffs or no tariffs. That is work in progress. But clearly, economic empowerment, hope for a better future, light at the end of the tunnel, will get all people thinking positively. And this is one of the best ways to control extreme behavior. And that's what Pakistan is trying to do. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being such a great audience. Thank you, ma'am. Oops, I better get rid of this. We are late. How are you doing?
Good, thank
See
you.
you,
Good to see you too.
Sometimes